Looks great.
No Donna, no Pam yet, huh?
Thank you very much.
Look at that.
There we go.
There's Pam. We were getting worried.
I was getting worried. I kept getting the little spinny circle thing, and my internet at home had been kind of patchy the last couple of days, and I thought, no, not tonight. But looks like we're good to go, and we've got lots and lots of things we want to cover. So I'm not going to belabor my technical issues, which are widely known anyway. We'll just get going with this week's nature news. And there we go. I think we will anyway. There we go. Let's start right from the beginning. So if you had a chance to pick up a newspaper or visit our website, stcnature.org, or maybe you're a reader of Kane County Connects, you might have caught last week's Good Natured column, which was on grackles. And I focused on the common grackle because that's the species we have in this area, Quisqualis quiscula. And I tell you, this is a bird that I've felt a connection to since I was about 6 years old. We had one fly into our garage when I was a little girl, and I was just so taken by the beauty of this bird. Meanwhile, my parents were, giving me all the things, telling me all the things that parents are supposed to say. Don't touch it, or the other birds won't like it anymore, and leave it alone. It's dirty. Wash your hands. Put that thing back outside. All of it. But I just kept looking at the way the sunlight danced over these iridescent feathers. And I've just been intrigued by this bird ever since. And so when I decided to write about him last, hoping that I could get other people, on this train with me, I'll give you, they are not a terribly well-liked bird. A lot of people say they're raucous, they're bullies. When they come to a bird feeder, they make a mess. They fling the seeds everywhere. They push the other birds out of the way. Other people blame them for raiding nests, which, as I pointed out in the column, is not really that uncommon of a behavior. A lot of birds raid other birds' nests. And it's just kind of a bird world sometimes. These guys are not at all unique in that respect. But I came across some other interesting facts that I wanted to share with you. One is this scientific name, Quisqualis, actually was changed from what Linnaeus had given it a name back when he was naming things. Carl Linnaeus, our famous taxonomist, he actually had given it the genus name Grackula, which to me, of course, sounded like Dracula. And it turns out, as so often happened back in the days when there wasn't a lot of communication across the continents, Linnaeus was looking at this bird thinking that it looked very much like the European jackdaw, which is actually a member of the Corvidae, which is the same family as the crows and the jays. Meanwhile, the grackles are part of the blackbird family, which includes, grackles, red-winged blackbirds, and orioles. So completely different families, completely different genus. So the name was changed to better reflect that. And off we went. Now, something that was kind of, I came across these statistics a while back, and it just been kind of nagging at me for a while, and I thought it's finally time to see what other people think about this. Grackles population is declining at a fairly rapid rate. This graphic shows other species in decline, and you'll see that grackles are right there at about 50% of what they were 50 years ago. There's, I was trying to get to the bottom of this. So oftentimes when we try to delve into what happens to species, why are they in decline, you hear the words habitat destruction and pesticide usage. I didn't really see a whole lot of, I mean, there's certainly all wild things are having habitat taken away from them as our human species expands. But something that was commonly mentioned, but it puzzled me at first, was lethal control measures. And I thought, you know, how can a bird that's protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty suffer from lethal control measures? Well, it turns out that there's actually provision for lethal control measures within our Federal Register. This is all related to agriculture and the impact that these birds have on it, but blackbirds, cowbirds, crows, grackles, and magpies are called out as being able to be controlled, and you do not need a federal permit to control any of these birds. And all you have to do is say that they're causing a problem, which I'll admit they can be hard on crops, especially because of their tendency to hang out in very large and actually mixed flocks when they're not in the breeding season. So as we get into fall and winter and spring, as these birds come through, they can wreak havoc on crops. They've also been found to spread diseases when they land in cattle feedlots, when they are feeding on the food that's supposed to be for the cattle, and they're eating it and they're pooping in it and they're spreading disease that way. So indeed, lethal control measures can be used against these birds. There's a publication that was put out by APHIS, which is the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. They're kind of in charge of taking stock of all sorts of species that could prove injurious to humans and human livelihood. In fact, I remember working with the APHIS people several years ago when we were seeing red-tailed hawks showing up in this area with tags on their wings. Turns out that was an APHIS project as well, because they were trying to figure out how far a red-tailed hawk would travel after it was relocated. They were trying, that was actually an effort to try and prevent hawk collisions with airplanes. And so hawks that were showing up around the airports we have in Chicago were being trapped and relocated at varying degrees of distance away, and then tracked to see how they were coming back. So anyway, APHIS has a whole bulletin out on just all the different things that these birds, the problems that they cause, and then the different measures that you can use to try and control them. So you guys know me, I have difficulty seeing the bad in just about any living creature, and these guys are no exception. I'm hoping that if you're a person who maybe doesn't feel, you know, terribly enthralled with grackles, that maybe you'll give them a second look, consider all the impacts that are working against them these days, maybe give them a chance and welcome them to your feeder. And maybe you too can say that, yes, I have grackles. I mean it in a good way. So now this little piece came into our, this was actually a Facebook message that we received at Hickory Knolls over the weekend. I got a video of quail wandering around Lincoln Elementary School tonight. What? Wait, what? Now, I have to say, when I read quail, my first thought was button quail. Those are sometimes kept in classrooms. And they're a small little bird, caged bird. Some people keep them as pets. And then I started thinking, well, St. Charles also allows backyard chickens. I wonder if anyone is raising quail for quail eggs. Just wasn't sure where that was going. So I said, hey, would you mind sending us that video? And so he did. And here's what we got. So this is Lincoln School on the Near East side of St. Charles, right near the St. Charles Public Library. This is the playground. And holy cats, will you look at that? It is a male northern bobwhite going to school on a Sunday, trying to go to school on a Sunday. So made me scratch my head a little bit. And to be perfectly honest, I don't have a good answer for this. Now, the person who sent this video in did point out that there is a lot of construction going on the Near East side as the city goes through its plans to mitigate and fix the flooding problems associated with the 7th Avenue Creek. So there's been houses torn down. There's been a lot of a disruption in that area. A lot of brush has been taken out. And so this person is wondering if maybe this animal was displaced from that activity. I'm going to guess maybe that did play a role in it. Again, I don't know. I don't know when a quail lands on a playground, you know, what the backstory is on it, but that could very well have played a role. But I did a little bit more digging. And, you know, if you're not familiar with bobwhite quail, the only place I've seen them in Illinois, and this is not to say that it's the only place they occur, but it was nowhere around here. I was downstate. I was at the Jim Edgar Panther Creek State Park, which is down not too far from Springfield, Illinois. So middle of the state. And I remember hearing bobwhite calling there. And it turns out that there's fields there that are kept in sunflower and a couple other grains, specifically for attracting upland game species like the bobwhite. Now, because it is a game species, the state is fairly interested in maintaining a population of them. I think, let me talking about them. That name Bobwhite comes from the song or the call of the bird. White, white. And as I started looking at what the state has in terms of records for bobwhite, they said that they can live in a variety of habitats, but nothing really considered suburban or urban. They like semi-open areas, which maybe could include playgrounds, but I don't think so. Brushy meadows, overgrown fields, pastures, ag fields, someplace where they've got some cover nearby, like a hedgerow or some woods. But then they also like the open space where they can forage. Yeah, playgrounds I didn't see anywhere on that list. Now, over here on the left, this shows what the Illinois DNR considers potential bobwhite habitat. The forested areas of southern Illinois, and as we're over here in western Illinois along the Illinois River watershed, a little bit here along the Mississippi, all the green area is considered good areas to find bobwhite. Over here on the right, we've got Audubon, National Audubon projection of how this range will shift as our climate changes. You can see it's kind of a north progression. So I guess in theory, we could be seeing more bobwhite in the area. But again, suburbia is not really in the wheelhouse of these birds. So I thought about it a little bit more, and then I went to a source that I rely on pretty heavily, and that is the wonderful Fermilab bird website. There's data taken there several times a week. There's employees there that will go out and volunteers that go out and basically bird the Fermilab campus. And over time, you can see they've assembled a data set that goes back to the 1980s. This shows bobwhite quail occurring at Fermilab. But if you read the fine print here, it may tell a little bit more of the story. It says that all the records of bobwhite at Fermilab have been in the fields east of Viola Road, which are used by people who train hunting dogs. This strongly suggests that the records are of released birds. That's the other part of the bobwhite story. I mentioned that sometimes people will keep them for laying eggs. Well, they're also, because they're an upland game bird, they are used quite frequently by people who are training their bird dogs. They want the dog to scent on the bird and be able to point the bird out. Well, point the bird. I guess they don't point them out. But bird dogs need to know what their quarry is before they can go after them in the field. So in addition to people possibly keeping these for the eggs or for the meat, they might also be keeping them because they're training bird dogs. So anyway, any of you who live on the east side of St. Charles, I would welcome hearing from you to see if you're seeing this particular individual, or if you're seeing, if there's a bobwhite invasion, that's definitely something we want to cover in Good Natured News. So anyway, just kind of a little curious thing that I thought y'all might like to know about. Keep an eye out for bobwhite in St. Charles. Now, another thing that's making its way here, although somewhat more slowly and somewhat more expectedly, is the morel mushrooms. Some of you who know me know that way back in the day, I did an internship at Campbell Soup, and I can't think of a better way to describe morel mushrooms other than good. They are one of the finest and most sought after mushrooms in this area. Facebook, I've got real mixed feelings about Facebook. I had to get a Facebook account of my own so that I could help maintain the park district's Facebook pages. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have opted in at all. But I have to admit there are some good sources of information there. And one of them is the Illinois Morel Mushroom Facebook page. Every year they post this map. And they update it every few days as people send in records of morel mushrooms. And you can see that they are marching steadily forward as the weather, and we've had some just really, really warm weather. What we're missing is moisture. That will certainly help if we can get some more spring rain in. I've always heard that morel mushrooms appear at the same time as an oak leaf is the size of a squirrel's ear. Now I checked the bur oak tree out here in front of Good Natured World headquarters when I came in today, and its leaf buds have not opened yet. So not quite time yet for morel hunting in this area, but I did just want to share a couple of tips with you. You read about where morels like to grow, and invariably they'll mention that they like to grow on the roots of dead elm trees, or the dead elm roots that are in the ground. I found that they can grow in a lot of other places too. Some of you might remember when I wrote about morels last year, this one here on the left, I found in my mom's backyard, growing at the base of the crabapple tree that I got, I think it was when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, as my Arbor Day tree that I brought home. I don't know if that means that it's not doing well and now it's growing mushrooms on its dead roots. I don't know, but there are some references now that will also say orchards are good places to look for morel mushrooms as well. Now, last year I was over at Delnor Woods looking at the beavers, which actually we're going to do a little update on those guys tonight too. But I kicked over this mushroom here and learned about another member of the Morchella genus. This is the half-free morel. So what that means is that a morel cap is attached at the base, but the half-free morel, it kind of hangs down. It's not attached all the way around. Another very important characteristic you want to look at if you want to go morel hunting is you want to look at the inside of the mushroom. A true morel, the Morchella species, is going to be hollow on the inside. You can see that hollowness here in the half-free morel. And you can see it here in this cross-section of another true morel species. There's also something called a false morel. And several different genera of false morel as well. But the big thing with them is if you slice it open, there's going to be a kind of a whitish, fluffy matter inside. It's not going to be hollow on the inside. So that's a big clue. This shape too, instead of having these distinct, almost honeycomb-like structures on the cap, this is more kind of globular, brainy looking, lobey-like. So some things to be aware of if you should choose to go mushroom hunting yourself. Now, another thing I wanted to mention, most of the public lands in this area do not allow mushroom collecting. So our park district, our forest preserve, we want our mushrooms to remain on our public lands. However, if you've got friends that have woodlots on their property, might want to ask them if you can check those out. And also state parks allow foraging for mushrooms. So Silver Springs State Park is probably the closest one that would have some decent morel habitat. Don't count on being there alone. You probably encounter lots of other people too. If you see somebody walking along and they've got a mesh bag hanging from their belt loop, chances are pretty good you're seeing a mushroom hunter. A lot of people will carry them in the mesh bags, occasionally in paper bags too. Those are a little more discreet. Plastic bags though aren't so good because that plastic just doesn't let the mushroom breathe, doesn't let the dirt knock off of it either as you're walking along. Now, I don't know about you and your, if you've ever gone morel hunting before. I've tried a few times, haven't had a great deal of luck, but I tell you, this is a mushroom that I was actually really pleasantly surprised to find out is edible and is actually quite common. It's one name is pheasant back and another name is dryad saddle. Used to be called Polyporus squamosus. Now it's Theoporus. Take a gander at that name there. Polyporus is way easier to say. This is a mushroom that grows on a lot of different deciduous hardwoods. I've seen it on box elder in this area. And of course, we've got a lot of box elders in our tree lines. A lot of people look at those as trash trees. A lot of them aren't doing so well. They're getting older, they're dying. It's a great place to look for the pheasant back mushroom. And you can see where it gets its name. Well, the dryad saddle part, that was not as obvious to me until I started reading about little woodland nymphs called dryads and how friendly and helpful they are. And I guess maybe they like to sit on mushrooms. I don't know, but that's where the name dryad saddle came from. Pheasant back though, if you look at the pattern on the backs of these pheasants, and then you look at the pattern of a young, and young is key, by the way, if you're thinking about eating one of these mushrooms, look at how the resemblance between the pattern here and the pattern here. Pretty cool, huh? So the pheasant back mushroom is indeed edible, but it's very, very important that you get it when it's young. I read one article where it recommended no larger than 6 centimeters. This double one here I know was bigger than that. And for whatever reason, I didn't put my lip balm gauge of size down on my kitchen counter. But these 2 lower mushrooms were perfectly edible and actually quite tasty. This one on the here, I should say it's not like they turn poisonous and kill you when they get larger, but they get tough as leather. So once that distinctive pheasant back pattern starts to disappear, it's probably not going to be good to eat, although you can boil it. What I ended up doing with this large one was boiling it, and I made some stock that I then used to make a soup. Forget all the ingredients I put in the soup, but the broth that the mushroom made gave it a very complex flavor. You can also tell if you flip the mushrooms over. So here on the right-hand side here, this is the mushroom that was too tough to eat. And look at the size of the pores. Look at how they've opened up. Remember, mushrooms don't create seeds, they have spores, and those spores need to disperse for the mushroom to be able to grow. So as the pores open up, the spores disperse. These younger mushrooms, the pores have not yet opened yet. This one, these smaller ones were much easier to slice too. And as I mentioned, they were pleasantly and surprisingly good to eat. So we're gonna now segue away from things that grow on dead trees, and we're gonna talk about a little bit of tree ID. We've done this a few times recently, looking at our different ashes. If you've ever learned a little bit about how to identify trees, one of the first things you look at is its growth habit. Does it have opposite branches? Does it have alternate branches? In this area, we have this fun little memory device, madcap horse, for M for maple, A for ash, D for dogwood. Cap is Caprifoliaceae, which is the honeysuckle family, and then horse is the horse. I've actually heard madcap horse buck too, if you want to, semi-complete sentence. Buck meaning buckeye as well. So that little acronym might help you in your journey towards learning the opposite branched trees. It also really helps because if it isn't included in the acronym, it's probably, it's an alternate growing species. So our oaks, our hickories, ironwood, hackberry, all of our other native species have an alternate means of, alternate way of branching. Now, when we look at the A for ashes, we've got white, green, black, and blue. Those are what we see in this area. Fraxinus is the genus. These first two, white ash and green ash, we mostly will see these in, well, we have them in our wooded communities, but they were heavily planted in developed areas as well. So, parkway trees, I know I can think of a couple of neighborhoods that were almost exclusively planted in ash trees when they were built, say 40 or so years ago. Black ash is a species that likes to grow where it's a little wet, and blue ash actually seems to have a preference for areas of limestone bedrock and glacial till, which oddly enough, that's exactly where we see these two species growing in this area. Now, emerald ash borer made national headlines when it appeared. Gosh, we're going back probably close to 15 years now. In fact, just west of here in the Lily Lake, Campton Hills area was where it was first identified in the Chicago area. There was even, I remember hearing about someone when all the news cameras were out reporting on this new and very dangerous tree invader in the area. Someone was wearing a maroon sweatshirt, and the emerald ash borer kept flying towards that maroon sweatshirt because that's an attractant for them. Underneath their brilliant emerald wings, you can see they've got a maroon colored body. The adults will feed on the leaves of the ash, but the real damage is done here in this immature stage. The larva of the emerald ash borer just wreaks havoc on the inner bark of in the living tissue part of the tree. Look at this, how the tree is just girdled. This goes all the way around the tree. as the larva is feeding, it's taking away the means for the tree to move nutrients up and down, to move water up and down. The tree pretty much starves and dies because of all this disruption in its living tissue. So this took a terrible toll, and millions and millions and millions of dollars were spent in the communities where emerald ash borer moved in. I know some areas made a decision. I know here in St. Charles, I think it was if the tree was 10 inches or less in diameter, don't even try to treat it, just cut it down. Larger trees, there was efforts to save it, and private landowners too spent quite a bit of money saving. There are treatments that are available to try and keep the larvae under control. But suffice it to say, we lost an awful lot of ash trees. But there's two species here in Patzers. I have to give you thanks for this, Steve. I think you took this video. Look at these ash trees here. Steve, you can see is in a wet area, which is where black ash tend to grow. Steve Patzer made another very astute observation in calling the growth habit of these ash trees is tortured, was the word you used, Steve. And it's a great way to describe that kind of twisted look that these trees can take on. And this is in a low area near Pheasant Creek here in St. Charles, a very apt place for black ash to grow. And Steve, I think you even wondered later on in the video where the mother ash was that probably wasn't around anymore, that could have sparked the growth of all these trees. So we've got some black ash trees fighting to come back here. And we've also got some blue ash trees. This is at Johnson's Mound Forest Preserve. I took this picture last week with some of the nature nerds. We were out doing a little ramble on a Friday afternoon. You can see it too offers that opposite means of growth. Big difference though between the tortured kind of gnarled looking branches of the black ash and the straight but winged formations on the blue ash. And look at all the blue ashes here. I was curious, and I asked Kim Haig, our steward, one of the steward at Johnson's Mound Forest Preserve, how is it that all of these trees are allowed to grow? Because here in St. Charles, back when we had a tree commission before we changed it to Natural Resources Commission, we were given the advice that if it's an ash tree, it should probably get cut down because it's just going to serve as food for more ash borers. Well, the forest preserve policy is, no, let's let them go. Let's see. In fact, all the ash trees, blue ash, are the most resistant to damage by the emerald ash borer. But look at all of these trees. And it's kind of, I thought, comforting between what we're seeing here with the black ash and what we're seeing with the blue ash, that maybe these trees hold the key to resistance to the emerald ash borer, or it gives some glimmer of hope for the future. But anyway, I hope you know a little bit more about ash trees right now. It's the A in bad cap horse, and it's opposite, and it is probably trying to grow in a forest preserve near you. Now, in past weeks, we've talked about Delnor Woods and all the beaver activity that's going on there, but I had some people ask me about, what's the bigger picture? What is the story? You keep talking about, the beavers at Delnor Woods. Just a brief recap. Here's Delnor Woods Park on the east side of St. Charles. Here's Route 25. Several years ago, the Park District acquired the parcel immediately north of Delnor Woods. Used to end kind of right about in the middle here where I'm moving the cursor, but we added another 25 acres or so, basically doubling the size of the park. Throughout this area, you can see there's ponds. There's a pond here. And by the way, this also kind of serves as a drainage. These ponds were formed by dams, and there's a creek that runs through the pond, through these ponds. And the ponds were formed by dams from the property's previous owners. They wanted to create these ponds along the way. This looks like lawn, and it's actually green duckweed. Same here, this looks like lawn, but it's also green duckweed. Here's where you enter the park off of Route 25. Well, the beavers had set up housekeeping up here in this far north pond, and they had placed a dam across the bridge, and it kept the water level. There was a small footbridge, and they built up a bunch of mud and sticks between the bridge and the substrate of the pond, which caused the water levels to rise, and it made an excellent place for them to build a dam. This is some video that we took last year. On the right here, this is the beaver lodge that was up on that north pond. But look at how low the water level is. Beavers always want to live in a structure where they can enter from below the water surface. Well, the bridge that served as the kind of the anchor for the dam that the beavers built was deemed to be unsafe. And since it was on park property, we had to do something about it. That bridge was torn out. And when the bridge came out, the dam went out, the water level dropped, and this lodge was all of a sudden not very well liked by the beaver. So they packed up and they went on the move. They moved from the far north part of the park down to, we're now, here's kind of a magnified view of the southern part of Delnor Woods. Here again is the entrance off of Route 25. And here is that pond. Remember I said it looked like lawn. That's the green duckweed pond, which by the way, it's not green and duckweedy anymore because the Park District put in an enormous aerator that keeps that, sounds like Niagara Falls when you're standing by it in the summertime, but it keeps the duckweed at bay, which I guess is, I'm not going to go there. But anyway, the duckweed's gone, and the water exits over the new dam at the pond, and it comes down through here. The beavers now live in this area here. You can view their activity if you walk along the path and you leave the path onto the mowed area at the very southern part of the park. This little hexagon here, that's a little shelter area. If you see that, start heading to the west, and you'll be able to look through the trees here to where the beaver are conducting all of their activity. Now, back the last week of March, we set up a trail cam. Turn your sound up. So that kind of munching is a very good clue that the beavers are active, but we didn't have the camera in quite the right spot. So we moved it just a little bit. Our department head, Chris Gingrich, went over and reset the camera, and he caught this footage just the other day. Look at the size of this beaver. You know, the average beaver weighs about the same as say a kindergartner or first grader. So have a little snack. More chewing. Get a good look at its tail there, the broad, flattened tail of the beaver. Here he comes back, curious. What the heck is this? Oh, hello. look at the time of the activity. This is all dead of night, 2:30 to 4:30 in the morning. Get a little to-go snack there. Those powerful rodent teeth. So I was a little bit worried when the beavers relocated because they're now in an area that is much more, it's a lot closer to houses, a lot closer to businesses, but the area that they've chose to dam up doesn't appear to be, if it's going to flood anywhere, it's probably going to be flooding in the park, which we can accept and live with that. It's something that we'll definitely continue to keep an eye on, and hopefully we'll get more cool video like this that we can share with you. If you get a chance, take a walk over through Delnor Woods Park, and maybe you can find some signs of beaver activity as well. So last week we talked a little bit, I think we talked about glacial erratics, those large hunks of granite that sort of appear out of nowhere in some of our natural areas. Those are leftovers from when the glaciers were here. We mentioned the Driftless area, and Sarah Kimber, I think it was you who asked, why was this area driftless? What we're talking about is northwestern Illinois, so like Joe Davis County and Galena and that area, northeastern Iowa, southeastern Minnesota, and southwestern Wisconsin. This area was relatively untouched by our more recent glacial episodes. And the question was, well, what was it? Was there a big old glacial erratic here that caused, what was it that made the glaciers avoid this area? Well, there's a really cool, it's not that long, it's, I don't know, half an hour long or so. There's a cool YouTube documentary called Mysteries of the Driftless. And at the end of that little movie, they talk about what it was that kind of all the forces that came together to keep the glaciers away from that driftless zone. And as is so often the case, it wasn't just any one thing. There's one, the bedrock in Lake Superior has a kind of a scoop shape to it. And it, how, water takes a path of least resistance. Well, so does ice. So as the ice masses were coming down from Canada, it followed that deep warping and kind of dove off to the west, further north in Minnesota. So it, kind of made a, what would that be, a hook? No, a slice. I don't know. I don't golf that often, but it moved sharply to the west instead of continuing on a southern path because of the shape of the bedrock at Lake Superior. Then, meanwhile, over on the east side of Wisconsin by Lake Michigan, there's a lot of very soft rock, some shale there. And it gave way under the weight of the big ice masses that were coming down, and it caused the ice to kind of dive down southward in that area. So it wasn't so much that the ice was being blocked in the driftless zone, it was just sort of, it was following the path of least resistance on the westward and the eastward sides of what is now known as the driftless zone. They also point out in the video that there's kind of an arch, meaning as you go farther north in Wisconsin, the elevation gets higher and the bedrock up there is very hard. There's a lot of granite up there. That too offered resistance to the ice that was moving. So it blocking going on up in northern Wisconsin, but then the ice kind of following that path of least resistance to the west and to the east resulted in what we call today our driftless zone. So thanks for asking that question, Sarah, because I thought it was a really interesting way of explaining it. And check out that movie too, Mysteries of the Driftless, because there's a lot of other information about a very close by and very fascinating area, both geologically and biologically. Very unique plants and animals that live there. Now, next week, we've got a little spoiler alert here. We're going to be talking about butterflies. I'll be writing about them. That column will be running this week. We're going to take a look at some bird nests. These would be from last year's birds, but it's something that once you see where a bird built in the past, you can keep an eye out for them as they're starting to come back this year. We're going to touch up on some spring ephemerals, reader emails. We don't know what other kind of late breaking news is going to occur. Bobwhite's at Lincoln Park. We'll see, next week, maybe we'll have ostriches or something. You have to stay tuned to find out. Before we turn it over for questions though, I did want to follow up on just a couple things from last week. This is Kay Hensel had sent garage spider in reference to dining room spider, which was the spider that I had living in my dining room for several months. Well, garage spider is actually the common house spider. And this was, I had promised to show you her last week when we did the unboxing, and then I completely forgot. So I made a quick video before I let her loose here in Good Natured World headquarters. She's, I looked for her this afternoon. She's actually living underneath the plant stand now. So hopefully she's keeping us pest free here as we go about our daily duties reporting on nature. But why don't you get a good look at that? And then we also last week mentioned an email where someone had found some feathers and they were wondering if something had attacked and killed a hawk. Well, they offered, this is the Anderson family out in Marengo, they had offered to send me these feathers, and I think they did. So I'm going to stop the share at this point, and I'm going to open up this box, and you guys are going to help me decide what kind of feathers might have ended up in front of the arborvitae in the Andersons' front yard. Now, you might also recall that email talked about the number of wild turkey that were coming to the bird feeders of the family's backyard. Slice this open. I'm going to be really surprised if this isn't feathers. That's part of the fun of an unboxing. Let's see what we got here. Doesn't smell bad, so that's good. Okay, so here's some newsprint. You know what this reminds me of? I'm going to make another spider reference. You know, some spiders put themselves, the male spiders put themselves at great peril when they mate with the female because she could eat them. So the male spider will produce what's called a nuptial gift, which is a big wad of silk. Sometimes there's a little prey item in the middle. Sometimes it's just silk and there's nothing in it. But I'm hoping there's something here. And it looks like there is. We've got, ooh. Okay, so this is the, they sent me the bones too. We've got, this is the keel, the breastbone of this bird. You can see pretty good size. And yeah, it doesn't smell too bad. And then we've got, there's a little note here. It says, here are your specimens. All right, let's see what we've got. All right, feather ID people. Ready? Oops. Okay, here's one feather. I would welcome anybody who wants to chime in with the comments. If you have any thoughts at all as to what these feathers are indicating. I don't know if it's, of course, this is smaller than I would expect for a turkey. I'm going to have to do a little bit more diving into bird anatomy before we find out exactly where this piece, I mean, it's part of the breastbone, but see what the differences are in the different groups of birds, game birds versus birds of prey. But if anybody here is a bird anatomy specialist and would like to either chat with us now or fill us in later with your thoughts, I would certainly share those with the group next week. But anyway, just another unboxing here at the Center of Good-Natured Operations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Does anybody have any questions, stories, observations, anything else like that that you care to share with the group? No? If not, I've got one more thing. I didn't know if we'd have time for this. Hold on just a second. When we were looking at that beaver video and you could hear the beaver munching, you know, a lot of people, they look at beavers as destructive. They talk about the damage that beavers take. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I have a hard time thinking any sort of negative thoughts about any of the wonderful wild creatures that we share our neighborhoods and our planet with. But this is an up close look at the beaver's skull. Check out those teeth. When you look at them from the side, you'll see that they're not orange all the way through. What we're looking at on the front here, that's the beaver's enamel, which purportedly has iron in it. They derived that from their diet, but as rodents, their incisors, these front teeth are constantly growing. If they didn't chew, there'd be the very real danger of having these teeth grow too long and the animal wouldn't be able to eat it all. But if we look at it in profile here, you'll see that it actually forms a chisel. The front enamel here is harder than the dentin here in the back. So as the animal chews, it's not only wearing down the length of the tooth, but it's also wearing off the back of the tooth, which kind of continually sharpens it. As a rodent, they don't really have a lot of teeth other than the incisors here and then the molars in the back. This particular specimen, I think we found after a burn. It's not in perfect shape. You can see it's missing a couple of the back molars here, but broad, flat head, sharp teeth. This is really the layout of pretty much any sort of rodent skull. It could be a tiny vole or a mouse. I was actually given this the other day. This is I'm not sure if it's a squirrel or a muskrat. I think it's a fox squirrel. Somebody made this for me. We should have done an unboxing for this one too. This is squirrel skull encased in acrylic. But now's the time of year we're cleaning up our yards. People are all kinds of questions about bones, but 2 teeth followed by molars and a big gap in between. You're looking at some type of rodent, and then the size will help you determine exactly what the species is. All right. Anybody have any questions, comments, anything for the good of the group?
It was great.
All right. Glad you're able to join us, Chris. Good to see you again.
Thanks
That
for the
last bit of
information. Yeah, about the crackles. The crackles was really good.
Yeah, well,
You
there's
know?
so many people that love to hate them. And I know even, members of my own family will say, I'm going to take the feeders down because there's down blackbirds and they're just making a mess of things and they're such bullies and everything. But every creature has a story to tell. And Grackles, what their story kind of reminds me of is what we lived through with, well, we didn't personally live through it, but what happened with the passenger pigeon 100
Mhm.
they were considered a little bit more than 100 years ago. We lost our last one, but they were considered to be so numerous that we couldn't possibly run out. And then they were considered to be kind of a pest, and people were just destroying them right and left, and we ended up losing them completely. So yeah, glad you appreciated that.
That's good.
We'll do butterflies next week because see in this week's count, butterflies are easy. They're an easy sell for people. All right.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks.
All right. Great to see everybody. Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
spring
Thank
like summer like we.
Thank you.
And I hope to see you back again next week.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
answering my driftless question.
Ah, doesn't that cool? Always the case where it's not just one thing or another. I was thinking, there must have been like a giant rock or something, but kind of a series of factors that came together. So thanks
I'll
for,
check out the video.
yeah, do it. Mysteries of the Driftless.
Thank you, thank you, thank
All
you.
right.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Pam.
Have a good rest of
My
your week.
last minute
Thank you,
help.
Pam.
Thank you, Pam.
Bye, everybody.